Hello, everybody, and welcome in live to another edition of the Bleeding Burnt Orange Show. I am your host, Matthew Miller. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out what we're trying to do, trying to build this brand up. Guys, sorry for missing last week. I was sick, COVID and spider bite infection. So not fun for me, but hopefully you guys had a good last couple weeks since I've seen you. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. And let's take care of a little bit of homework before we do get started here. Go to ticketsmarter.com if you're going to purchase any tickets for any sporting events and type in code BIG for $10 off a purchase of $100 or more, or type in code BIG20 for $20 off a purchase of $300 or more. Guys, if you're going to a big time sporting event, it's going to cost you 100 to $400-500. So go over there to ticketsmarter.com, type in code BIG for that $10 off, or if you're a big baller, type in code BIG20 for $20 off a purchase of $300 more. It really helps out. And again, guys, subscribe to the SEC channel, which you see me on, and also subscribe to the Texas channel, SG1 Sports. You will see me here every Wednesday talking Texas football in the offseason, also during the season and after the game. We might add in another show. I think I'm going to start breaking in live when things start happening. So please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out the channel, guys. I really appreciate it. Jump in. What's up, Longhorn Nation? What is up, Jackson? Thank you for being here. Please hit that like button. So Texas, the last time we talked, did not have a defensive line coach. For a long time, everyone thought it was going to be Roderick Wright of the Houston Texans coming home, but he decided to stay in the NFL. And I think the case is he's from Houston. He's with the Houston Texans. The trajectory of that team is skyrocketing, guys. I don't see that team going down anytime soon with CJ Stroud, Will Anderson, the rookies they drafted balling out like they did this year. They're only going to get better, along with D'Amico Ryans, an up-and-coming head coach. So why leave your hometown, your home team, to come back to Texas and honestly probably maybe a little bit more money, but it's a harder job as well, in my opinion. So I think it was the right move for him. But we do end up with a defensive line coach and Kenny Baker, someone I am excited about. The guy has experience at all levels. He's coached high school, he's coached college at Western Kentucky, UT Chattanooga, and also Mercer as well. He played at Gardner Webb, was a very good player there. Won the defensive award in his senior year as the best player on the defensive side of the ball at Gardner Webb, voted on by the team. So that means a lot to me. There's a lot of leadership qualities there. He was a team captain for multiple years. That's a big leadership quality. And then he coached in the NFL. I think that's another feather in the cap for this guy. I wanted someone with college NFL experience who can be a good recruiter. I think this guy fits all of that. We'll see what happens. I'm going to trust Steve Sarkisian on this. Again, not enough into it to me for the NFL to go all in on this guy, but I think it's a C plus, B minus hire. I don't think it's a bad hire by any stretch of the imagination. There's definitely guys out there that you could have done worse with. And I like when I hear him talk. You know, he talks about how recruiting is the lifeblood of college football, and he's 100% right. So if he can get on the right track and recruit better than Bo Davis did, because that was Bo Davis' downfall. Bo Davis was a very, very good developer on the defensive line. You saw what he did this year with Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, two guys who are going to be top 3 picks in the NFL drafts. And it's just a really good job by him developing. But bringing in guys recruiting-wise, he hasn't done a great job. So if Kenny Baker can up the recruiting and then match 85 to 90% of what Bo Davis did developing, we're in a really good spot, guys. So I don't hate the hire. Is it a home run out of the park hire? No. I think the only guy for me that would have been the home run hire was Ryan Nielsen of the Atlanta Falcons. And guys, at this point, it's really hard to get someone to take an even job at the college level, even though I think assistants at the college level get paid more. The problem is, guys, it's a lot more work, especially at the University of Texas. You'll get paid more in it, but it's a lot more work. It is. You have to recruit all year round. You have to keep the guys on your team happy. It's just not going to happen. We saw today Jeff Hafley of Boston College take a defensive coordinator position in the NFL as a head coach at Boston College because it's better, guys. If you can take a step down but go to the NFL, I would do that in a heartbeat. First off, you only work 8 months, 7 months out of the year. You get 4 or 5 months off. There's no off season in college football. There is none. Zero. The off season does not exist. You have to recruit constantly because if you're not recruiting guys from high school, guess what? You're recruiting guys from the portal. You're recruiting guys on your own roster. You're recruiting guys in future on other teams, honestly. I know it's illegal, but it does happen. So I 100% understand why these guys don't want to go from the NFL to college, and I understand why guys are leaving college to take lesser positions in the NFL. And that's why we got Kenny Baker, in my opinion, was willing to take the jump because he's an assistant defensive line coach. I'm going to tell people right now, if Kenny Baker succeeds like we would like him to succeed at Texas, he'll be here for 3 years max. He will be here for 3 years max, and then he'll go right back to the NFL as a defensive line coach there because that's really all he needs to do to get back to the NFL. He's proved he's a good defensive line coach at lower tier colleges. He's proved he's a decent assistant defensive line coach in the year he had with the Miami Dolphins under Vic Fangio, who comes highly respected everywhere and anyone you talk to. I'm a Denver Broncos fan. He was a great head coach, great defense, or he was a average head coach, but a great defense coordinator, and that's what he is. Kenny Baker comes recommended by Vic Fangio, so that really helps too. His last step is, can he be the solo guy in that room and take a defensive line coach, make it his own, and see what they can do? And if he does that with Texas in 2 to 3 years, he will be a defensive line coach in the NFL, and we'll be out here finding another one. And that's what Texas hopes for, because if he doesn't do that, then he's failed. We want guys to be successful where other places want them. In Texas now, the way the college football landscape is headed, Texas wants to find guys like Kenny Baker and then turn them into NFL guys, because then you'll get more guys from the college ranks, lower college ranks, or not lower college ranks, NFL ranks, that will come to Texas and be like, hey, listen, that worked for Kenny Baker. Well, I'm an assistant defensive line coach in the NFL. Why don't I take the defensive line coach here and then move up further, just like Kenny Baker did? So we hope this works out for his successor. We hope this works out for the team this year and moving forward. And we also hope it works out for Kenny Baker. We want this to be a thing that works out for everyone involved. I'm hoping it does. Like I said, I think it's a good hire. I don't think it's a great hire. So we'll see how that works out. He's going to have talent to work with, but he's definitely going to have to elevate that talent because, guys, our defensive line last year, I think it was one of the 2-3 best in the country. I think it was the second best. I think overall it was the second best behind Michigan. Defensive tackle position was the best in the country. You had the top 2 defensive tackles, according to Pro Football Focus, and Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. They are no longer here. So he has a little bit of a haul in front of him, guys, to get this to where it needs to be. We'll talk about an addition very soon that was added to the defensive line room that will help out, but we're still looking for that A guy in the portal. Even honestly, a B guy. I think the guy we'll talk about later, and Tia Sevilla, was good, but he's not great. He's more of a Trill Carter guy. And let's just jump into that. Texas overall portal haul. The portal window is basically closed. Obviously, Michigan players could jump in, but just like I said a couple weeks ago, guys, if Sharon Moore becomes the head coach like he did, Michigan's not going to have guys leaving. They're just not. Why would you leave from a guy that's clearly respected in the locker room, that coached multiple games when Harbaugh was suspended, and you just won a national championship? And I think you have a chance. That roster is good enough to get into a top 12 spot in the playoff, especially with their schedule. If they go 9-3, I fully expect them to be in the college football playoff next year. So we'll see what happens, as long as they don't get blown out in the 3 losses. But I don't think anyone's transferring from them. So I think the portal haul for this window is going to be closed for every team. Texas ends the portal very well. We'll talk about the 2 guys they did add. We talked about Amari Niblack a couple weeks ago. He comes in with 19 receptions last year, 321 yards, 4 touchdowns. He is an absolute fantastic athlete, guys. I like Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm is a good player. Gunnar Helm is a guy that I think is going to be drafted somewhere in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. That's the type of talent he is. He's not Jatavian Sanders. He doesn't have the elite athleticism. He doesn't have the catching at the point of contact that Jatavian Sanders does, but he's a better blocker. I think he's more of a third down, find your window, Jason Witten type tight end. He's got a little bit more athleticism, obviously, than Jason Witten, when everyone thinks of at the end of his career. But if you look at Jason Witten when he was younger, he was pretty athletic. I think that's my comp for him, honestly. He's not going to be a Hall of Famer. I'm not going to say that. But like a poor man's Jason Witten. And Amari Niblack is basically a wide receiver at the tight end position. And it's something Texas needed to do, was offset each other. You have Amari Niblack coming in, basically your wide receiver at tight end. You have your Gunnar Helm, more well-rounded guy. And Steve Sarkisian loves to run stuff out of 12 personnel. If you go back and look at it, he ran like 46% of all offense out of 12 personnel last year. If you guys don't know what that is 2 tight ends, 1 running back. So I fully expect him to do that at a 40% clip next year. The reason why I think it will be less is because the wide receiver room is overall better than last year. You only had 2 really good guys and 1 good guy in Jordan Whittington. This year you have like 5 or 6 guys that I think will see the field quite often, and your tight end room has also taken a step back. You're going to lose Ja'Tavion Sanders, which is a top 50 prospect. Right now he's ranked in the top 35 by most scouts. So I don't see Amari Niblack coming in and filling that, because if he does, he'll be here for a year and then gone, because I think he's a redshirt sophomore. I don't see him filling it, but I think he'll have a good year. And I think between Gunnar Helm and Amari Niblack, you'll be able to in the aggregate, fill out for Ja'Tavion Sanders. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I expect to happen. Overall, I think this offense is going to be fun to watch with the Silas Boldens, the Isaiah Bonds, and the Amari Niblack coming in the transfer portal hall. Also with what you have on campus already with DeAndre Moore, Ryan Wingo, Parker Livingston, Ryan Niblett, those guys. I fully expect this wide receiver room to compete and be very good next year. Again, 4 out of 5 offensive linemen returning. That helps out as well. And then, guys, another one like we talked about, Tia Sevilla. I'm not going to try to pronounce the whole first name. It's very hard. I will figure it out, and I will do it, but I'm not going to do it right now. Right now, he's Tia Sevilla. Defensive lineman from Arizona, 6'4", 305 pounds, 6.5 tackles for loss, and 1.5 sacks. To me, this is a guy that comes in and he's a rotation player. When he comes in for his 20 to 25 snaps, he does a good job, and that's what I fully expect. And he may not even play that much. I may 15 to 20. We'll have to see. But I think he's an upgraded version of Trill Carter. If you guys remember, we got him from Minnesota last year. He played decent. He is now going to be a starter for Auburn. So, I mean, think about that, guys. We had a guy transfer out to start at Auburn when he was here, and he was just a rotation player. That's how good this defensive line was last year. Do I fully expect it to be that good next year? The interior, no, because you're going to have Alfred Collins, who, unless he takes that jump, which he is capable of, I just don't see it happening. I don't see. I mean, guys, again, we had 2 of the top defensive tackles in the country. Alfred Collins has a lot of room to fill. For example, Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat were both ranked above 90 in Pro Football Focus. Alfred Collins was at 79. That's a very good grade. Do I think Alfred Collins can jump 11 points in 1 year? I don't see that happening. Do I think he can get up to about an 85? Yeah. So if he can get up to an 85, and then we fill that other spot with Tia Sevilla, Vernon Broughton, Jere Bledsoe. If one of those guys can come in and hit like a 70 grade, I think that's good enough, because I think the defensive end position will be better. In fact, I would bet on it being better. You have Barron Sorrell there. You have Ethan Burke there. You have Colin Simmons. And then you bring in, again, another portal haul and Moore from UTSA, who had 14 sacks. So overall, I expect the defensive line to be about the same. I think we'll get more pressure, but I think we'll be less stout versus the run. Last year, we were the best run defense in the country. We were top 5 in every rush defensive metric. That's just not going to happen. It's just not. It's sad to say, but it's not. I think we'll up the sacks. Last year, I think our leading sack guy was a mix. It was Ethan Burke with 5.5. I think Anthony Hill also had 5.5. I fully expect Trey Moore, Colin Simmons, Ethan Burke, Barron Sorrell, one of them is going to have 7 or 8 sacks. I fully expect that. We haven't had that in a very long time. Not even Joseph Osai reached those numbers, a 3rd-round draft pick that you guys remember a couple of years ago to the Bengals. So it's going to be hard, guys. But overall, this portal haul was very good. It ended up actually as the 7th best portal haul, but when you dive deeper, it's better than that, guys. It comes in with 8 commitments with an average of 92 overall points per player. That's out of 100. That's insane that you're that high. With just 8 commits, that's why you're that high. Or with 8 commits, that's why you're so low with that average. The teams in front of them, like the 2 top teams in the SEC, guys, are Texas A&M and Ole Miss, and they have over like 18 commitments. Texas A&M has like 25 commitments. Think about that, guys. They're replacing like 1/4 of their roster with transfer portal. Texas, if I'm any other, if I look at people around the country, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do what other teams do, because to me, I don't think you're going to be able to mold that group together that quickly. I just don't see that happening. 25 is a lot. And I think Sark, like I said before, he's treating this like the free agency period in the NFL. He's looking at it and saying, where are my holes and where can I fill them with the best player available? And he's done a very good job of that. You see that with the wide receiver position, getting the number 1 wide receiver in Isaiah Bond. You see that with Amari Niblack, the number 1 tight end. You see that with the number 1 kick returner in Silas Bolden, punt returner as well. And I think he's going to be more than that. I think he's a very deadly player. And then you see that with Matthew Golden, who's also a top, 6 or 7 wide receiver in the portal. And Trey Moore is a top 3 edge defender, and Andrew Makuba is a top 3 safety. So he's just done a spectacular job. We really only have one hole. I fully expect when that spring portal opens, defensive tackle. We need one more, and we need a good one. We need a TSV is a C guy. He's a what by a C guy I mean he's a rotation guy that can come in and get you 10 to 15 snaps, and you'll lose very little production. You don't want him to be out there more than that, but he's good enough for that. They're looking for that guy that can play 30 to 35 snaps at a high level and compete every down in the SEC. That's what they're looking for. If they can get that one guy, guys, I think there's a chance this team is in the national championship. It really comes down to that. And Oregon, we'll talk about the losses in the portal. We lost Jabbar Muhammad, which isn't as big as people think. The one that hurts the most is Jamari Caldwell from Houston transferring to Oregon because Bo Davis left. Guys, if we had Jamari Caldwell with Tia Sevilla, I would be shocked if Texas isn't in the Final Four next year. Oregon has almost single-handedly this offseason, props to them, probably or could have, we'll have to see, taken away a top 4 spot from Texas. I think we'll be ranked in the top 4 or 5 going in the next season. We should be. But I'm talking about at the end of the season, because you take a really good defensive tackle that could start and play at a very high level in the SEC. You take away one of the best cornerbacks in the portal, which does Texas need? No. But if we get him, we become so versatile on the back end and so deep that I think we're one of the best 10 to 12 best secondaries in the country. So that does hurt. They could have single-handedly cost Texas the national championship with those 2 players, because if you put them on our team, I think we're the second best team in the country. I think we're right behind Georgia. Right now, I would say we're third. I think Ohio State comes in ahead of us, and I think Georgia comes in ahead of us. Still think Oregon's slightly behind because I don't trust Dylan Gabriel as much as I trust Quinn Ewers. And at the end of the day, guys, you do have to have a decent quarterback to win a national championship. You don't have to have an absolute stud, as we've seen the last couple national champions have been Stetson Bennett and J.J. McCarthy. And no offense to J.J. McCarthy, I've made my feelings known. I think he's a solid quarterback. If we're just drafting players, I think he's like a 3rd or 4th round pick in the NFL draft. Stetson Bennett obviously got drafted in the 7th round, either got drafted in the 7th round or undrafted. But those teams also had insane defenses. I don't think this Texas defense is going to be at that level. I fully expect them to be about the same, if not better than they were last year. And I think the offense is ready to take an enormous jump with what we got in the portal, what we brought in recruiting, and overall our schedule. So Texas going into the SEC, guys, I fully expect Texas to be a top 4 team in the SEC. There's been a lot of talk of where does Texas line up. Next year, guys, I think it's Georgia and everyone else in the SEC. But after that, I think Texas might be in that second group, and I think it might be by itself. It's going to be very interesting to see. We'll have to see what does happen here, but I'm going to share my screen real quick, and we're going to go to Texas football schedule, and we're going to just run through this real quick. And this is the schedule, guys, going to the going to the season next year. So you have the spring and white game, obviously April 20th. That's actually a little bit later than normal. But overall, excited to see what happens there. You see that we also have the Colorado State Rams coming in. I think they're going to be a decent team. They usually are. And then the game that most people are waiting for, week 2 of the season at Michigan. I think we win this game. Again, this is way down the road, guys, but I wanted to jump into this because it has been brought up, and I think it's going to be continued. And we'll jump into it, I'm going to say once a month, just to get my temperature on it once a month to see where I'm at. And also the transfers. We'll be adding transfers here soon. We'll also have another signing day here in like 2 weeks. We might add 1 or 2 guys there as well that could help. So at Michigan, with Jim Harbaugh leaving, with J.J. McCarthy leaving, with everyone leaving there, guys, I think Texas wins that game. I really do. It's really hard for me to believe that an Alec Orji can come in and beat Texas in his second start. I just don't see that happening. And Sharon Moore in his 5th or 6th games as a head coach versus Texas, who brings back more players, brings back more talent, brings back their head coach, everyone. We're the only team from the college football playoff last year, guys, that brings back their head coach. So I think we win that game. Then you see UTSA. I think we win that game as well. We talk about Mississippi State. That is the SEC opener, so that gives me some hesitation. But Mississippi State, again, Texas has a favorable schedule because look at this. Michigan, new coach. Mississippi State, new coach. I know it's the SEC opener, but it's at home versus a new coach I don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. Will Rogers isn't there. Everyone was expecting Dylan Gabriel to show up. He did not. I'll go to this again so I can scroll down. Then you see the back half of the schedule, and we'll talk about that as well. So you have Oklahoma, guys, and we lost them last year. We played one of the worst games we could all year. We lost them by, 4 points. They come in with Jackson Arnold, who will basically be in his 6th or 7th start, and the statistics do not favor first-time starting quarterbacks in the game, in the red rivalry game. They don't. They do not fare well in their first start. So I don't think Jackson Arnold will fare well. I actually think we beat Oklahoma pretty easily. They're replacing all of their offensive line. I know they got some guys in a portal. They're replacing their offensive coordinator. They're replacing their quarterback. And guys, this again, the schedule just lines up nicely because of what is happening with these other teams. In normal years, this is a very hard schedule. If this is Dan Mullen at Mississippi State, we're going to have issues with them. If this is if Brent Venables had Dylan Gabriel back with Jeff Lebby, we'd have issues with them. I don't see us losing. But this game right here, guys, if Texas handles business, this is probably 1 versus 2 or 1 versus 3 in Austin the week of there's a big race going on, and Georgia fans, F1, that's what it is. There's an F1 race, so there's probably not going to be many Georgia fans there. It's going to be a very interesting game. It's probably going to be the most rowdy Texas has ever been for a home game. The most rowdy I've seen them, I've never been to a game, but on TV, has been Ohio State when Ohio State came in the year after we won the national championship. So it's going to be interesting. I think that game is going to be crazy. I think Georgia probably wins that game. I think it's a close game. I think it's within 1 touchdown. So that is our first loss. And the game that I hope to be going to at Vanderbilt in Nashville, I mean, Vanderbilt sucks. We're going to wipe the floor with them. Florida, who probably will have another coach. I don't think Billy Napier survives up to this point. If he does, he's a dead man walking. And again, here's the same situation. We go to Arkansas. Guys, if there are 2 games on the schedule, I would bet a shit ton of money on Texas to win. It is Oklahoma and Arkansas. We lost to Oklahoma last year, which cost us a higher seed, which probably cost us a chance to play in the national championship, and with Jackson Arnold coming in. And then we go back to the scene of the crime. It is Sark's aha moment that this is going to be harder than it was, harder than he thought it was. And we got absolutely skull dragged by Arkansas in Fayetteville. They beat us into the ground. They ran for 300 yards. Sam Pittman may not be there. And if he is, he's going to get skull dragged. We're going to go in there and we're going to beat the ever-living shit out of Arkansas. Arkansas has no chance. They're going to have either an interim head coach at this point or Sam Pittman again walking on the sidelines knowing he's going to be fired in a couple weeks. And they beat the crap out of us 3 years ago then when we go back. No, we're winning this game. Again, if there's 2 games I'd be willing to bet a lot of money on to win, it's Oklahoma and Arkansas. We're winning that game. The game that scares me, Kentucky. Kentucky is going to be an underrated team next year. We'll see how. To me, it all depends on because they have the talent everywhere else. They have Darian Brown at wide receiver. They have a good defense. They have a decent offensive line. They have a good coach in Mark Stoops. Can Brock Vandagriff come in and be a force like he needs to be? Can he be one of the best quarterbacks in Kentucky history? If he does that, they can compete and they might be able to sneak one out on us. That game scares me. We'll see what happens. And then you see it, last game of the season, Thanksgiving week. I think they're going to play it on a Friday. Let's actually scroll down and check that out real quick and see if we do play them on a Friday. No, we are going to play them on a Saturday, so that stinks. I wish we would have played them the Friday after Thanksgiving. But at College Station, again, new head coach, but at this point, he will have gone through the whole season, so I don't think that matters as much in this game. We'll see. To me, there are 2 games that depend to me on the quarterback. Is Connor Wegman who they think he is? If he is, they have a shot in this game since it's at home, first rivalry game in over a decade versus Texas. And then you have same thing with the Kentucky, like I said, with Brock Vandagriff. At worst, guys, unless something drastic happens, like a gigantic injury at Texas, we're 9-3 next year. We're 9-3. That's the worst we're doing. And the best we can do, some people have said 12-0. I just can't. I cannot imagine beating Georgia. I can't. So I'm not going to put us at 12-0. I think we go 11-1 at best, 9-3 at worst for right now is where my temperature gauge is at. And if I had to bet, I'm going to bet the middle. Every time I set what the height is and what the floor is, what the ceiling, what the floor is, I'm going to bet in the middle. So I think we're going to end up 10-2. I think we split one of those games between Kentucky and Texas A&M. And I think we end up at 10-2. That is what I would bet right now. I have no clue what Vegas feels on the Texas line. I don't even know if that's out there yet, but it's definitely going to be an interesting season. It's going to be very fun, guys, just because it's something new. It's something we haven't seen before. The first 2 years of the SEC are going to be really fun because it's going to be new experiences and new stadiums, maybe in the first 3 years, but it's just going to be fun. Now that will wear off eventually because when you go to Baton Rouge for the third or fourth time, it's just not going to be the same. But that first time, as a Texas fan, walking in that stadium and getting to watch them play LSU is going to be really fun. That's kind of a rivalry, honestly. If I had to pick a rival going into the SEC, I think LSU is right there. We're right next to them as a state. They hate us in recruiting because we win a lot of battles. We hate them in recruiting because they win a lot of battles, and they just took our defensive line coach. So it's going to be very interesting. We don't play them this year. I think Texas ends up 10-2 right now is the early prediction for that. So, guys, before I get out of here, we'll go into your comments. Hey, everyone, a couple of awesome shows going on right now. This show and the Mountaineer Locker Room show on the West Virginia channel, 2 awesome shows that need more support. Yes, please support the show, guys. I really appreciate it. Joey, thank you for that. We'll stop sharing. I'm thinking more like 10-2. Yeah, I agree, Joey. I think the height of this is 11-1 for Texas going to the SEC, and I think the floor is 9-3. And 10-2 probably gets you into the college football playoff. And you know what? In a couple weeks, I'll break down of what I think every SEC team will do and where Texas stacks up with that. Because I think if you end up in the top 4 of the SEC, you probably end up in the college football playoff. That 5th team, that's going to be a question mark. I think 4 teams from the SEC and 4 teams from the Big Ten make it. And then you get, obviously, the group of 5 is going to get one, which I wholeheartedly disagree with now that most of the good teams are in the Power 5 conferences, Power 4 conferences. It's going to take me a while to say that, the Power 4 conferences, so it's going to be interesting. B-Bean, how strong is Sark support? How many years of no playoffs were questions are? Oh, no playoffs. Sark has 2 years max. Guys, this is a 12-team field. Texas is recruiting at a top 5 level almost every year. When you include the transfer portal, this is a top 3 to 4 roster every year. The transfer portal, guys, has now given no excuses to top tier programs like Texas, because with a NIL and transfer portal where you can say, hey, dude, you're in the transfer portal, you want $250,000 come to Texas and play football. Hell yeah, let's do it. There's no excuse. None. Zero. Texas should be in the 12-team playoff every year. And I don't think that's arrogant to say. Texas has to be in the 12-team playoff every year. They have to. If this was still a 14 playoff, I don't know what my answer would be on that. I would say like 5 or 6 years. But I think he gets 2 years of missing. And like, let's say next year we go 9-3, but all these like Ole Miss and Missouri could have great years next year with their schedules that they have. Let's say they go 10-2, 11-1. Let's say 11-1 for Ole Miss, 10-2 for Missouri. Texas goes 9-3, tied with another SEC team. Let's say we're tied with LSU, and LSU has a slightly harder schedule, I think. And they get in over us in the last spot available. I'm not going to blame Sark that much. I'm just not. 9-3 in the SEC is good enough for me in the first year. I'm not going to get super angry. And yeah, B-Bean, you have to realize it's a 12-team playoff. Again, this isn't the Final Four anymore. It's 12 teams. You're basically going to be guaranteed 4 teams from the SEC, 4 teams from the Big Ten. To me, every year you're going to see Ohio State and Georgia. Every year out of the Big Ten and the SEC. There's 3 other spots to fill. You're telling me Texas can't be one of those 3 other spots because Alabama's no longer in that category. They're not. So there's between Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas, Oklahoma. I mean, who else, guys? LSU, so that's 5 teams. I'm not ever going to put Florida in there until they start to take their head coaching position seriously. They haven't had a good head coach since Urban Meyer. So you're competing between LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri, and Oklahoma. So you're competing for 4 teams for 3 spots. So it's 5 teams for 3 spots. You're telling me we can't outplay 2 of those teams to gain one of those spots? That's my issue. It's a 12-team playoff. You have to get in. Overall, I think Texas next year, I would expect them to make it because you're going to be a top 4 team. If you beat Georgia, I mean, I'm not going to say we should win the national championship, but you have to be you have to make the top 4. That has to happen. I know it's at home, so that's gonna like dilute things a little bit because you're not gonna if you play them again, you're not gonna play them at home. That's another fun aspect of this, guys, with the 12-team playoff. You're gonna be playing home playoff games the first round. So that's gonna be very interesting. And to me, guys, the 5 spot is juicy because guess who you get? You get the Power 5. You get the Group of 5 team. You get the Group of 5 team. So why would you? First off, you get to keep your momentum. You don't. You get 2 weeks off. You don't get a month off, or 2 weeks off instead of 3 weeks. So you get to keep a little bit of that momentum going into that game, and you get to play a weak opponent. Hell yeah, sign me up for that. So to me, the first spot is obviously the best. You want to be the number 1 seed. But if you're not the number 1 seed, I want to be the 5th seed because you play. You get 2 weeks off, so and you play the Group of 5, and that, you should win the Group of 5 game because guys, next year the Group of 5 is probably going to be what Liberty, Memphis. I'm trying to think because SMU's not even in the Group of 5 anymore. So I mean, if we played Liberty, we could beat Liberty with our backups. Liberty's not a good football team compared to all these other teams that are going to make the playoff. They're like Mark said a couple weeks ago when they played Oregon, and I commented on this as well. They're like the 55th, the 65th best team in the country. Let's just say they're the 60th best team in the country. The 60th best team in the country has no right for a chance to win a national championship. They have no chance. This isn't the NFL, guys. The worst team can't beat the best team. The worst team in the Power 5 would never beat Georgia. They would never. They could line up 1,000 times. They would never beat them. So I think it's interesting. This whole new landscape of college football. I think next week we'll talk about where I rank Sark as an SEC coach. I've seen a lot of talk about that too, so we'll talk about that. And let's put this up there. Probably already started the conversation knowing Texas. Yeah, of firing Sark. No, he's firm, guys. Like unless he doesn't make the college football playoff the next 2-3 years, then we'll start having questions. But would it shock? I think it would shock most people at this point if Texas did not make the college football playoff. It would shock me. I just don't understand that schedule compared to if you look at every other SEC schedule based on last year and what we know going into next year. It's like one of the 5 or 6 easiest schedules. It's not a hard schedule, and you're bringing in the second or third most talented roster into the SEC, so you have to make the college football playoff. Before we go, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Go over to ticketsmarter.com, type in code BIG for $10 off a purchase of $100 or more. Type in code BIG20 for $20 off a purchase of $300 or more at ticketsmarter.com. Ticketsmarter, don't be a dummy. Hit that like button and subscribe as well. This has been another edition of the Bleeding Burnt Orange Show here live. I will be here next Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the SEC and SG1 Texas channel. Hit that like button and subscribe not to miss it. I'm here every Wednesday from here on out, unless I'm sick like I was last week. But as we get later in the year, that's not going to happen. So please hit that like button. Please subscribe and hook 'em, guys. As always, I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Thank you, guys.